thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
We are, this is our Soap Hub Insider Fireside Chat. We just started it this year, and it's just a little opportunity for us to talk to you about life in the soaps outside, and for our fans to be able to ask questions. But for now, we can start the show off with Hope and Michael. Do you guys want to go ahead and take it away?
Sounds like a great idea. Shout out, Vincent. How are you?
Hey, Michael. How you doing? I didn't know you were going to be on.
Yes, it's very nice to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there. How have you been holding up during the quarantine?
You know, I've been doing okay. I mean, the biggest issue has been remembering what day of the week it is, because it seems like there's no schedule anymore for things. Yeah, I mean, it's been tough on a lot of other ways as well. I have family members who got very sick, but they've recovered, thankfully. And you know, I'm just trying to keep myself active. I worked out today, which was great. I go hiking a lot. I do try to get out and go sit on the beach or go sit up in the hills and watch sunsets, and you know, just trying to get out and get some fresh air and just you know, clear my head and keep positive about everything. So that's the I think that's the most important part for me, and to do whatever I can to stay healthy. You know, that's what I do.
I read back in March that your son Ash was part of a coalition that went to New York City to help out with, you know, medical treatment of people. How did that go, and how is he doing?
He's doing great. He was there for 2 weeks. They set up the field hospital in Central Park. He was part of that team doing that, and it was very productive, and he was really happy to have had the opportunity to do it. And then when he went home, he was there for 2 weeks, getting everything set up and working with the city and working with others as well, engineers, to make sure that everything was functioning there. And then when he went back, his wife, my daughter-in-law, she was in her 9th month of pregnancy. 8th or 9th month of pregnancy. So he had to quarantine himself in a hotel locally to the house before he was able to see it for 14 days. So he had to do that too. But he got through the 14 days. My granddaughter was born, my second granddaughter, Zara, she was born in May. And yeah, so they're doing fine. They're doing great. And he's, yeah, he does a lot of traveling. He travels all around the world, sometimes to refugee camps around the world and other locations as well, with whom he works with. He works with Samaritan's Purse. So he's involved with security for them, and working with, he develops relationships with the intelligence agencies globally, wherever they're working. They help to set up refugee camps. They set up other things as well, and he does that and works with them around the world. So that's what he's doing.
You know, the 4 soaps are back in production, but not a lot of other TV production is. I understand the real estate market is actually doing okay, and that's something that you're involved in as well, correct?
Yes, and it is exploding at the moment. Crazy. I mean, I had, there was one property, this is just one example. There's one property that I was showing to some clients of mine. I sent them the listing because it fit their criteria, what they were looking for. But they weren't able to see it right away. They were hoping to see it by the end of this week. It was just listed at the end of last week. By Sunday, they had 27 offers on this house, all of them over asking, 27. And so I called the agent I called her yesterday, Tuesday, because I saw that the agent had put it on hold, and I was a little confused as to why they put it on hold. So I called her, and she said, we just got overwhelmed, inundated with offers. We had 27 offers, and we counted 26 of them, and all of them were over asking. So that's kind of the way the climate is right now, especially in a certain price point. It's very highly competitive, and the rental market as well is really kind of crazy right now. So I work with a few people that are looking for rents. I'm co-listing a property in Naples, Florida, that's going to be on the market next week with an agent there that I referred to him. So that's going to happen. So yeah, I've been working with a bunch of clients, and that's helping me to keep busy too, keep sane, you know, so.
I was watching Days of Our Lives the other day, and Damos's name came up.
Yeah.
It's probably not like a photo. I think if they run a photo of an actor, that actor gets like a fee, but probably not for a name. But
yeah, probably not.
Nice to know that, you know, Damos is still talked about. What was your experience on Days like? Because I know you've been on a lot of different shows.
I had a great time on Days. I loved it. I loved the character. I thought the character was fantastic. I especially loved the backstory of the character. You know, that's really the foundation of a good character, is when you have a really strong backstory. And so I was very happy to dive into that, and also obviously work with people like John Aniston, you know, and others, Ari Zucker and others. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that the character had a lot of potential. I was sorry to see it end as it did, but you know, that's the way it works sometimes on these shows. You have no control over that. It was great though.
No one's ever gone from Salem for that long, so you never know.
You never know. And I found it was interesting because when I finished the show, you know, it was somewhat of an affirmation of my work, is that then a week later I got nominated for a lead actor, you know, for an Emmy. So I was like, all right, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. It was nice to be recognized for the work that I did on the show, and I was very happy about it. So.
And I think it was relatively towards the end, but they had some scenes where you got to interact with Judy a little bit.
Yes, yeah, and that was wonderful. I loved that. I was really excited about that. Yeah, I love Judy, and she and I, we've you know, gone through a lot together, and I actually communicated with her, spoke to her again a few weeks ago. We had a really wonderful conversation. I just love her, and she's doing great. She sounded great. So I checked in with her over the last few months several times just to see how she was doing, and obviously it's been a process, given the trials and, you know, the things that she's had to endure. It's significant. But she sounded great. She really did. And she was so grateful for everybody's support, because she has had this overwhelming outpouring of support and love and prayers for her on her behalf. And she was so grateful for it. So she's great. Yeah. And it was nice. It was nice working with her on the show. It was great. You know, I miss her. I miss working with her, and maybe we'll get a chance to do it again sometime. You never know.
Well, that's going to have me circle back to my next question, which is, as you know, one of my favorite things to ask you about. But can you tell me again about how that 3-day guest role on Guiding Light turned into launched your really whole career, and you had a great 2-year run there. Can you talk about that? Yeah,
it really did. It was, for me, foundational for my career working in television, and especially in daytime. It's the only audition I ever had, frankly, and I've been on now 6 shows, I think. So everything that I've had since then has been offered to me, which I'm grateful for. I didn't have to audition for anything. That's always nice for an actor, to go through the strain of auditioning. But yeah, I went in for a 3-day role, you know, with reading opposite Betty Ray, who was the casting director, and Gail Hope, who was the executive producer, and read with Betty Ray. I actually improvised in the scene with her. The scene was, I had to walk into the girls' room at the college to follow Mindy in there and flirt with her, okay, in the ladies' room. So I walked into Betty Ray's office. I actually asked her, I said, do you mind if I walk out and I'll come back? And she said, yeah, that's fine. So I did that. I walked into the production office, was the door that goes into production. And Hope Smith was in there. She was a production assistant at the time, and others as well. And she remembers this. We remember this because I walked in, I was like, and I saw the production crew. I was like, I'll be out in a minute, 1 second. And then I walked in and did the scene, and I walked over to Betty Ray's desk, and I literally laid down across the desk, took out a cigarette, lit my cigarette, and hung out, and was like, offered her a cigarette. We were improvising around the scene, and she went with me. It was great. And after I finished the scene, she just said, just wait here for a minute. I want to get somebody. So she went and got Gail. Gail introduced herself to me. We talked a little bit. She goes, let's do that again. Let's do the scene again. You do it any way you want. I said, okay. And I went out to the office again, Hope Smith, everybody's looking at me. They don't know me. I'm like this young punk kid actor coming in there. I'm like, I'm sorry, I know I'm distracted, but I'll be out in a minute. And we went in, and I went and did it again for Gail. And I was working at Joe Allen's I was just starting as a waiter there. And I got to work. It was my first day having my own station. I had trailed somebody for a few days. And my agent called me on the phone behind the bar, and right before my shift, and told me that I got the part. And so it was really kind of funny, because then everybody that I worked with was like, "Are you going to keep the job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a 3-day gig. I'm not leaving this job. But it's not going to help me after the first week." So, but then it was another 3 days, and then they offered me a long-term contract. And I had made a commitment to myself when I did that. I felt I was young, and I thought, this is the time in my life to take chances. So I didn't want to get tied in too long on a show and not go out to Los Angeles at some point and take chances and audition for other roles. So it was my choice. I left after 2 years, and they literally more than doubled my salary to stay for one more year, because I'd never done television before, so I was one of the cheaper, low-budget actors on the show.
Sure, scale.
And so, but they offered me a really great contract, and I turned them down. My agents thought I was crazy. I'm like, I made a commitment to myself, 2 years. That's it. I'm going out to Los Angeles. And I had a really good first year in LA. I mean, first they did a movie of the week with Nancy McKeon called Firefighter.
Right.
I literally left that production in Vancouver, flew to LA, washed my clothes, packed my clothes, and drove down to Camp Pendleton to start filming Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. Then I finished that. I did LA Law right after that. And what else did I do? Then I did Echoes in the Darkness, a Joseph Longbaugh miniseries that I played opposite Treat Williams and Robert Loggia and a bunch of people. It was great. And Gary Cole, got to work with him. I ran into him at the TV Academy event recently for Veep. This was last year. And I was stunned that he remembered me. This was 1986. And he was so nice. It was great. We took some pictures together, and he was like, "Damn." He's like, "Man, it's been a long time." I said, "Yeah." I go, "Geez, that's been a long time. I haven't seen him since 1986. So it's pretty funny that he remembered. I did a lot of stuff that first year. So it was good. It was great that I took the chance. I needed to do that for myself. So.
What was your thought on Lou Jack being killed off? Because I don't think I've ever told you this, but it really made the holidays depressing that year. No, seriously, what did you think about that decision? Because in a way, it might have been closing a door, even though it didn't.
Yeah, it was crazy because, the character, when as I said, it was my choice that I was to leave the show. And I think in some ways it was, I guess it was an honor to me and my work, because they felt they couldn't recast the role.
Right.
And I felt, well, that makes sense. Since I gave the first breath to this character, I may as well give him the last. That's fine. So I was okay with it. I was fine with it. It was interesting though, because once I died on the show, there was a little period of time before we did the memorial on the show, and the audience came to learn that I had died. A bunch of people were sending flowers to the studio like crazy. So when there was a memorial show for it, I wasn't there, obviously, because I was dead. Right. But there was a memorial, and the people in production told me that they were using the flowers that people had sent to put on set for my character. So that was pretty cool. That was really cool. I mean, the audience, that was my first, foray into daytime, and the audience was so overwhelmingly gracious and supportive, and I was doing appearances like all over the country, practically every weekend, with a lot of other actors from other shows. That's why I've known people like Michael Knight and Darnell Williams and others like that. I've known them for 37 years, because of the appearances that we did all around. We used to do them a lot at that time. So it really did create for me a sense of family in this medium for all these years. Oh, yeah. And every time I go to work on another show, I've known a lot of these actors. If I haven't worked with them, I've known them for many, many, many years. So it's pretty cool. It's a nice repertory company. So very cool.
What you did on Guiding Light as Lou Jack, Philip and Beth were the big couple, and to shift allegiance like that and watch Beth grow from maybe the teen girl she was into more of a young woman, that was really fascinating to see, because that was storytelling with great actors. And
it was also, I mean, kudos to Pam Long and the whole writing team. Everybody, they did a fantastic job with it. And it, you know, and I think also it was very interesting because I wasn't really, when I first started that show, I wasn't your typical soap actor in appearance. You know, I was working opposite some people that had, like, you know, wall-to-wall muscles on their forehead and chiseled features and everything. And I was this scrawny little punk kid, you know. I always felt like, especially when I first started, they had me in a fedora, you know, and I felt like I was just like a nose with a fedora. That was basically it. But it really was in large part because of the writing. They did such a great job with the writing, and it was the slow build of the development of the relationship between Beth and Lou Jack. So it was awesome. Yeah, it was great. And that, you know, that's always the case when, even when I started out as David Hayward, I saw great potential in that character immediately. And that was supposed to be a 3-month gig, and that turned into 13 years. But I saw immediate potential in the character, but it always matters how you write it and how the writing develops. And they ultimately really developed a great character and backstory, especially the one with Vanessa when they brought her on. Because then the audience started to get to realize why I was the way that I was, you know, what made me the man that I was, even what made me become a world-renowned cardiologist. You know, it's like I was fighting death. Every time I saved somebody's life, it was me trying to bring my father back, who had committed suicide, you know, that I couldn't do anything as an 11-year-old boy while he was bleeding out in my arms. So it's things like that inform the character, and it just girds up the character. And I love that. And I felt the same way with Deimos. I felt his backstory was fantastic. That's really important. So yes, they did a great job with it. And I'm grateful that Judy and I had the opportunity, along with the other actors on the show, to develop that story, you know, and be a part of it. It was exciting.
While you were speaking, you said the word chances, and you went out to LA, and that brought to my mind one of my favorite miniseries, Lucky Chances.
Yeah.
Where what brought that about? I mean, that really is one of my favorite miniseries. I'm not.
It was great. Yeah, it was very cool. Yeah, what brought that about? I would say the audition came up. My agents told me about it, and I'm going to confess something right now. I didn't know Jackie Collins, even though she was like world famous and probably one of the most prolific writers of her time. I didn't know her books. I didn't know it, and then when I kept mentioning her name, that I was up for this role in the Jackie Collins miniseries, every woman I knew was like, "Oh my God, Jackie Collins, which one?" Well, I said it was like Chances, and it's another one, Lucky. So they're doing his Lucky Chances. And I'm like, "Oh, it's one of my favorite books, Chances." Who are you playing? I said, "Well, I'm up for Gino Santangelo." "Oh my gosh, that's like the lead. That's the main guy." I said, "Yeah, that's it. That's right." And I even said that to Jackie at one point. I said, "I got to be honest with you. I had a great relationship with her. I loved her, and she was so supportive. And she was on set every day, and she was always there. And even after, she was, you know, one of my great supporters for years. You know, always talking me up to people, and even in interviews. And she was so sweet. And but I remember telling her this after I was doing the show. I said, "I got to be honest with you. I never heard of you before this." And she laughed. She goes, "Well, that's okay, because I never heard of you." But yeah, she was fantastic. She was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I read for it several times. I had to go in, and Buzz Kulick was director, and I was real excited about that because Buzz Kulick was the director of Brian's Song, which many of us that are old enough remember. That was like one of the most popular movies of the week in the early 70s, about the life of Brian Piccolo and Gail Sayers, and it was with Billy D. Williams and James Caan, and it was such a powerful movie, true story, football players, and it really was. It was very special, and so when I found out he was directing, I was like, wow, holy crap, that's amazing. I could possibly work with Buzz Kulick. He was in his early 70s, and he had just been diagnosed with diabetes at the time, and so it was a tough shoot for him. because we were doing it in the summer and we were in Vegas in late July for 2 weeks. That was tough. I mean, we literally had extras collapsing in the middle of scenes, okay, because they were so hot and dehydrated. And you had the desert wind as well that made you feel like you were in the inner machinations of a blow dryer. It was just crazy. And I made it worse for me because I was aging throughout the whole storyline. If you remember, I started at 24 years old and I ended up at 64, but there was 11 different age increments. So there were days I was in makeup for 5 hours before I do my first scene, and I was like 64 years old. And in these scenes, I'd be in the desert in the middle of a scene, shooting a scene, and it's going great. Then they call cut, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, your face, it's melting. In the middle of the scene, the face, all the glue and the material that was on me was like streaming down my face. They'd have to throw me in a van with the full blasting air conditioning on and patch me up and then get me back out there. So it was really tough for Buzz Kulik, especially, for others as well. It was a strenuous shoot. For me, it was more because of the makeup. And there were times, because sometimes I'd have to do like 4 different age periods throughout the course of one production day. And I could be in makeup, putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off, 9 hours total throughout the whole day. My face was kind of raw after the shoot, to be honest with you. But it was great, though. Got to work with people like Sandra Bullock, a bunch of people. Nicolette Sheridan was my daughter in it, which is kind of funny. And Michael Nader, he and I worked together in that. He was my nemesis in it. And actually Elizabeth Moss was mine and Sandra Bullock's daughter. She was our daughter. I think she was like 8 years old.
Young Lucky, yes.
Yeah, she was like 8 years old, and it's pretty funny. So yeah, it was cool. It was good people. I enjoyed working with everybody. It was a great shoot, though.
I'm going to circle back to David Hayward because with ABC now re-owning the rights to All My Children, One Life to Live, and all of those characters, how would you feel if you ever brought David to Port Charles? I mean, Anna's there.
Yeah, of course. I would love it. I would love the opportunity to work with her again and to revisit Dr. David Hayward. I love that character. I really do. I love playing him. I loved all the opportunities that I had to develop the character and show all different sides to him. He was a multifaceted character, and he was so underappreciated by the not so good people of Pine Valley. He was like a lifesaver, and they didn't seem to care much about that unless somebody in their family was about to die and they needed his help. I mean, I did some crazy things on that show. I delivered a breech birth, and during a nor'easter with me, David Canary, and Marcy Walker. Their daughter, can't remember the character's name right now.
Colby?
Which is, what was it? Colby, yeah, Colby. Yep. I delivered Colby, and then on the remake of the show, when we did it for iTunes and for Hulu, I actually had a relationship with Colby, and I said to the producers at the time, and I said, I don't know if you remember this, but because I read the script, said that we were like going to have a love scene. I'm going, I don't know if you remember this, but I delivered Colby. Okay, it was a nor'easter. I brought her into this world, and now I'm like sleeping with her. And the producer at the time said this, and I know she definitely knew this was not true. She was just saying, she goes, oh, I'm sure the audience won't remember that. She was being sarcastic. I said, of course they're going to remember that. They know everything. They know what number is my hotel room when I was living in a hotel. They know like everything. They watch everything. So it was a little funky. That was a little weird, but it was great. I love that character, and of course I would love to revisit it again. It would be wonderful. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, that was a lot of great answers and questions. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have some questions of my own, but I'll hold those. I think we can go ahead and open up to the fans that are here today.
Oh, wow. Cool.
The question that we have is from Nicole. Nicole, are you ready?
So my question is, well, it's kind of two, but out of all the characters you played on different soap operas, what is your all-time favorite character and why?
That's tough, but I would say that without question, Lou Jack was probably my favorite character because it was foundational for me. And it was my first job in television. I'd only done theater I did theater for like 5-6 years prior to that. I had never done any television before. It was my first TV job. And it was very exciting to learn that discipline, to work in front of cameras like that and the whole thing, create a character. And it was just such a solid character. I loved him. And it wasn't until Dr. David Hayward where I felt like I finally found another character that rivaled Lou Jack. But the difference is with David Hayward, I played him for 13 years. Lou Jack I played for 2, which is kind of amazing because I played my twin brother, Nick McHenry, for 5 years. And people still call me Lou Jack when I walk down the street, and when I bring up sometimes in conversations, like, oh yeah, well I did. They were like, well, you came back again, didn't you? I said, yeah, I came back as my twin brother. I said, oh yeah, what was his name? I was Nick McHenry for 5 years, but they remember Lou Jack. It's a very distinctive name, that's for sure. But yeah, I would say that Lou Jack is probably my favorite character, even though I loved David. And I also liked Damos very much too. I did like him, especially in the beginning, first year plus. Yeah, it was great.
We have another question, and it's from Mindy.
So at the beginning of the conversation, you touched about the pandemic. And I know a lot of people during this 6-7 months, they've started a hobby, they've learned a new language, done something they never had to do. I myself am obsessed with courtroom cases. And I wanted to know, every day I watch, because they have to show them on Zoom because you can't physically go in the courtroom.
Sure.
So I wanted to know, have you taken up anything that you never had time to do because you've always had such a busy career?
Because I'm still doing the real estate, that's still a part of my life. And I do that pretty much every day. I'm always searching for properties for clients and prospecting, doing that. So I do that pretty much every day. It's not like I have nothing to fall back on right now. And I did shoot a Western a few weeks ago, which was great. I had a blast doing that. It was my first Western. It was really fun because it was during this time, because even my hair was even longer a few weeks ago. I got it cut last week. I hadn't cut my hair for 7 months because of the quarantine. And I had a fuller beard. And I remember I said this to my girlfriend at the time. I said to her that I really feel like I could do a Western now. And my first audition a month later was for a Western. And I auditioned with a FaceTime interview with the casting director, read for him there. He recorded it, showed it to the producers, and then they had me come in for a meeting and a reading in Burbank. It was when things were starting to open up for production. And I got the part, and it's a great role. So, I've kept myself busy, but I can't honestly say that I've started any new ventures or, I also play my piano and guitar on days when I'm just like relaxing, just to, do things, and sometimes even write some things. So that's pretty much it. But I never even thought about looking into court cases. That's an interesting endeavor that you're doing there. That's kind of funny. But I have been binge watching a lot of shows, and I think I've kind of exhausted the whole repertoire that I'm like interested in right now. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of that, just series and things like that. So.
Cool. Thank you, Mindy, for the questions.
Thank you, Mindy.
Our next fan is going to be Pam. Pam, thank you again for joining us on our Fireside Chats.
Very good to see you again. I just
good
have
to see you too.
This was sold at a soap opera fan event as a keychain, and I turned it into a pendant, and that's a picture of you. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Thank you, honey. That's so beautiful, Pam. Thank you, honey.
Very good. My question was, quite some time ago, I remember reading something that you had written, and I'm trying to recall the context, but it was like an article, and it was very deep and very well written and very thought-provoking. And at that point, I just thought to myself, "Ooh, I'd like to read more of some of the things he's written."
Yeah.
I haven't written anything, and if it's something that we could have access to.
Yeah, I know that I wrote for a magazine for several years. I was a contributing writer for Gladys magazine, and I wrote mostly about life events, my life events that I went through as a young kid living in Queens. The first one I wrote about was the week after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the impact that it had on me as an 8-year-old boy living in Queens, which was a multiracial, multicultural, and religious community. And the impact it had in that community during that week up until the wake. And it was, yeah, that was the first thing that I wrote, because it was something that stayed with me for like 40 years. And I finally one day, it was kind of strange. I was going to an acting class at Beverly Hills Playhouse. This one I was on Y&R. And I was taking classes there, and I got really kind of inspired in the class that day and that night. And I got home at like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, you know, this has been bandied about in my heart and my head for 40 years, and I think I need to put it down on paper. So I wrote it. I wrote that article, and it was called "Divided We Stumbled," and the impact that it had on my friendship with a young boy, 8 years old. That it wasn't us doing anything; it was imposed upon us by grown-ups, and it was kind of a traumatic experience at the time, but so was the whole event for everybody at the time. So yeah, that was the first one I wrote. And then I wrote about another thing about my piano, how I got my first piano as a kid, and the lessons that I had learned from my parents, you know, and earning the right to have it was kind of interesting. And also about a trip that I went to Italy. So there were numerous articles that I had written during the course of that period of time. It was about a year, 2 years I was writing for them. And I, you know, occasionally I think about doing that again and sitting down and just start writing some more, and possibly getting it out there and getting it published again. So I don't know, but thank you, honey. But you know, you can, Pam, if you go onto my website, vincentirizarry.com, those articles are there. So if you want to see them, just go to one of the tabs, search on them. I can't remember where it is. It may be in media or something, or interviews or something. I can't remember right now. But they are there, so you can pull them up and you can read them if you like. All right?
Thank you, Pam. That is such a wonderful question. And I probably will go and look around your website later, Vincent, to look
There you
for that.
go.
Let's move on to the next question. It's from Karen. Karen, are you ready?
My question for you is,
Sure.
I loved watching you play piano when you played Blue Jack and all your characters. Would you consider like recording some music and putting it on your Instagram or your Facebook fan group page so we could actually listen to it?
You know, that's interesting, because I actually was even thinking about this recently, because there have been several songs that I've written that I was thinking about maybe recording and doing that with, possibly putting them on Instagram, and just getting them out there, because I enjoyed doing that. Yeah, I've enjoyed, especially like when I was on Days of Our Lives, that Ken Corday asked if I'd be willing to play piano on the show, and I was like, sure, why not? Just give me notice. Don't ask me to play a Chopin waltz, you know, 3 days before the show, because it had been a while since I'd played classical. And I loved it. I had a great time. I mean, I did, in the course of the time that I was on the show, I know I did Chopin, some Bach, Beethoven, Debussy, Eric Satie. I feel like there's somebody else that I'm missing, but I did several different pieces, and it was great. I had a great time doing it. But maybe someday, maybe I'll get it out there a little bit more, or record something and just put it on there. We'll see. So thank you.
Our next person, which is Leona. Leona, are you ready?
Can you talk a little bit about working with the brilliant Beverly McKinsey?
You know, that was such an honor, privilege, and a blessing that I had the chance to work with Beverly. And again, it's so funny. It's similar to the Jackie Collins story that I said I didn't know who she was. I didn't know who Beverly was when I came on the show, because I didn't watch soaps, all right? And I remember when I was on the show for about 2 months, I guess, maybe a month and a half on contract once I got signed. And they told me they were bringing on this actress to play my mother. I was like, oh, that's wonderful. That's awesome. And they're like, oh, she's amazing. Like, it's Beverly McKinsey. I'm like, Beverly McKinsey, I don't know her. And they were like, you don't know who Beverly McKinsey is? She was, you know, on Another World. She played Iris on Another World. And then they did a spinoff. Pam Long actually did a spinoff, Texas. And she was the only actor that I know of that had their name above the title of the show. It was Beverly McKinsey in Texas, you know? And I didn't know who she was, but we hit it off immediately. The first day that I met her, she was so wonderful, so gracious. And I brought flowers in for her when she came into work. And we just struck it off immediately. And I always, her son, Scott McKinsey, he started training as a director when he was on the show there. When I was on the show there at that time, and he's still directing today. He directs on General Hospital a lot, and he's wonderful. But I always tease him saying that I was her favorite son. So it's funny, but I loved working with her. We had a great working relationship, and some of the most powerful scenes I had to do first on television were with her. When I first met her, our characters first met. And it was always like that. We always just worked so well off of each other. And she was brilliant. She was brilliant. And I guess if there's one regret I had with Beverly is that she never won an Emmy, which was astounding to me. That made no sense. And I felt bad because the last year that I worked with her, she had such great material. And she had not been submitting herself for an Emmy for several years because she didn't want the letdown, you know, that if she didn't win, she got tired of it. And I talked her into doing that the last year that she worked on the show. And I was like, your work is amazing. You've got to do it. You got to do it. And she didn't even get nominated. And I felt terrible because I know it upset her. It was upsetting for her. So that's something I regret, frankly. But she was a beautiful person inside and out, and she shared some very personal stories with me. And I know there's a book actually coming out about her because the author, Scott, asked if several of us, myself and other actors that we worked with her on Guiding Light, would talk with the writer, the author. And I did that probably about 6 months ago, I guess, maybe a little longer. So I'm assuming a book is going to be coming out at some point soon. And we all shared some personal stories, and some that were very personal about her early life that she shared with me that were really quite fascinating. So yeah, I love Beverly, and she's a great loss to us, that's for sure.
I enjoyed this. Thank you, Vincent, for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Leona. Thank you, everybody who came on. I really appreciate it.
Vincent,
hopefully it was fun for you guys.
No, this is wonderful. We had such a wonderful time. Like I said, I looked at the clock and I realized the time had flown by. And so
yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully you will join us again another time, for sure.
Yes, I'd be happy to. This was great. I had a great time. I hope everybody enjoyed it as well. It was fun. So let's try it again sometime. All right.
Yes. Well, thank you. Everybody say bye to him the best way we can with our Zoom. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care. Blessings to you all.